Conduct disorder isn't more than just bad behavior. You may have heard of conduct disorder before, but today we're going to jump in and talk about why it's often misunderstood, stigmatized, or swept under the rug. You might have seen conduct disorder portrayed in movies as the bad kid diagnosis, but there's so much more to it. Welcome to the What's Eating You podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Giorgio, and I'm a clinical psychologist. Welcome back, my friends. Today we're going to break down conduct disorder as we do in our weekly episodes and how it differs from childhood behavioral problems. We're going to talk about whether it's genetic and a question I hear from concerned people on TikTok asking me, does this mean my child would become a socio or psychopath? And we're also going to talk about the best evidence-based strategies for treatment and why early intervention is everything. Before we get into today, disclaimer, this is not psychological or medical advice. And whilst I am a clinical psychologist, working with children is not my primary area of expertise. So make sure you always consult with your GP or your psychiatrist or registered professional. This question came through on TikTok, and every time I do a video on conduct disorder or oppositional defiant disorder or psychopath, sociopath, it usually gets a lot of traction. And this has been an episode I've been meaning to record for some time now. So I hope you find it helpful. If you enjoy it, always let me know. Number one, what is conduct disorder? Conduct disorder, or CD, is a diagnosable mental health condition that shows up in children or adolescents who engage in a consistent pattern of violating rules, harming others, or breaking major social norms. This isn't just about having tantrums or being defiant once in a while. Conduct disorder involves behaviors that are serious, frequent, and impair a child's functioning in school, at home, or with peers. To meet the diagnostic criteria, the child must show at least 3 of the following behaviors in the past year, with 1 in the last 6 months. Here are the categories. Aggression towards people or animals. For example, bullying, fighting, using weapons, or cruelty. 2, destruction of property, fire setting, vandalism. 3, deceitfulness or theft, lying, breaking into property, stealing. 4, serious violations of rules. For example, running away, skipping school, staying out late before the age of 13. There are 2 different types of conduct disorder. There is childhood onset. Now, this is before the age of 10, often more severe and long-term. And then there is adolescent onset, which is after the age of 10, which is typically more influenced by peer dynamics. Remember, these behaviors aren't just disruptive, they often reflect deeper emotional, neurological, and environmental changes. Now, conduct disorder, as we said, it usually is diagnosed before the age of 10, but can be after. And many children who have oppositional defiant disorder, which we see even younger, which is more emotional outbursts and aggression, can go on to develop conduct disorder if it is left unmanaged. So conduct disorder is more about behavior. It's more about deceit and serious violation of rules. Section 2, is conduct disorder genetic? Yes, genetics play a significant role. Hereditability estimates for conduct disorder range from 40 to 70%. This means a child may be biologically predisposed, especially if there is a family history of antisocial behavior. So, for example, if the father was antisocial, maybe he's been in prison, maybe he's struggled with his own behavior. ADHD, yep, that increases the risk. Substance use and mood disorders. And this is critical. Genes are not fate. Conduct disorder usually develops through an interaction between genes and the environment. So, for example, a child may have a sensitive nervous system or an impulsive temperament, but the outcomes are shaped by parenting style, trauma or neglect, peer influences, socioeconomic factors, supportive versus chaotic environments. So, yes, there's a genetic component, but how it plays out really depends on a child's environment. Do you struggle with rejection sensitivity? Or maybe you have a hard time controlling your emotions? This is why I wanted to give people psychological strategies as well as behavioural techniques to help improve your ADHD. ADHD Journey is now live, and it is a course and community designed to help you thrive with the brain that you have. Because you're a listener of this podcast, I have a special gift for you. 50% off your first month, plus a free emotion regulation toolkit and a burnout and recovery guide. Use the code ADHD VIP in the checkout, and I'll see you on the other side. Part 3. Will my child turn into a psychopath? This is a common question that I've seen a lot on TikTok. The short answer is no, not necessarily. The term psychopath, it's not actually a clinical diagnosis. In psychology, the adult diagnosis we use is antisocial personality disorder. And this is a cluster B personality disorder, which is quite serious. And it's when people violate the rights of others. They usually have issues with the law. They are impulsive, and in extreme cases, they can go to jail or be found in forensic settings. So, conduct disorder, it can be a risk factor for developing antisocial personality in children, especially in children who display callous, unemotional traits. So, if a child presents with a lack of remorse or guilt, that can be a risk factor. Low empathy, shallow or manipulative emotions, blaming others and not taking responsibility. These children are at higher risk of continuing antisocial behaviors in adulthood. But here's the good news. Early intervention can completely change the trajectory. Not all children with conduct disorder go on to develop antisocial traits, and many go on to live healthy, connected lives. So instead of asking, what will they become? We should be asking, what do they need right now to feel safe, regulated, and connected? Part 4, how is conduct disorder different from other conditions? It's really easy to confuse conduct disorder with other childhood conditions, so let me break it down for you. Oppositional defiant disorder, I mentioned that before, and this is usually in younger children, and it involves defiance and irritability, but it's less behavioral. It doesn't include serious aggression or rule breaking. ADHD. ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder. So kids are born with this, and it's about how the brain has developed. It can involve impulsivity or poor emotion regulation, but the difference is it doesn't have the intentional harm or manipulation we see in conduct disorder. And yes, you can have both. You can have conduct disorder and ADHD. Autism spectrum disorder, ASD. So when you were hearing me say earlier that people have a lack of remorse or don't show much emotion, you might be thinking about kids on the spectrum, because kids on the spectrum, which again is a neurodevelopmental disorder, you're born with it, they might struggle with social rules, but this is due to social communication differences, not a disregard for others and not being intentionally manipulative. And then the last diagnosis is antisocial personality disorder, which often includes a history of conduct disorder before the age of 15. But not everyone with conduct disorder develops antisocial personality disorder. And to be diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, it's usually not diagnosed until you're 18 because your personality is still forming. So what do we do about it? Part 5, how do you treat conduct disorder? Conduct disorder is treatable, but it's not a quick fix. It requires early intervention and a multi-pronged approach, And it's so important you get on this early. Don't let it slide. Step 1 is parent management training. This helps parents know how to respond to behaviors, set boundaries, and reinforce positive actions. You can do this parent training with a psychologist or with someone who works with children. 2 is cognitive behavioral therapy. This helps the child learn to regulate their emotions, develop empathy, and build social problem-solving skills. Number 3 is family therapy. There may be issues in the family which led to this developing in the first place. So family therapy supports the whole system, not just the child, especially if there's a conflict, trauma, or inconsistent parenting. There are 4 social skills-based programs that can make a big difference, or school-based programs. 5, medication might be used in a co-occurring diagnosis. So if the child also has ADHD or depression or severe aggression, medication may be used. And finally, trauma-informed care. Many children with conduct disorder often have a history of neglect, abuse, or household instability. Treating the trauma is essential. So remember, it's really important to speak to a professional and to get help for this. Conduct disorder, it's not a moral failing, it's not a bad child diagnosis. It's a signal that a young person is hurting, struggling, or missing critical emotional tools. The earlier you step in with compassion and structure, the better the outcomes. So remember this, kids do well if they can. Dr. Ross Green. So instead of punishing, let's get curious. What skills are missing? What's going on underneath? The brain is changeable and support makes a difference. As always, if you found this episode helpful, please share it with someone who might need it. And if you're navigating this, please don't do it alone. Reach out for help, speak to someone you trust. And I want to say thank you for listening to me on the What's Eating You podcast. See you next time.
Did you know by taking 2 seconds to leave a rating or a review, you help me get the podcast out to more listeners just like you who could really benefit from the information? I appreciate all your support and thank you for tuning in.